Hello and welcome everyone to our today's webinar this evening. I hope all of us are fine and doing well during this time of COVID-19. Although Europe is gradually getting out of it, but still America, Asia, and some part of Africa are still grappling with this pandemic. We hope humanity will defeat this pandemic as it did in the past, and life will go back to normal again at some point soon. The title of today's webinar is The Crisis in Libya and the Role of Turkey. The speaker of today's topic is Ferhat Polat. Few words about Ferhat. He is a deputy researcher at TRT World Research Center. He is also a PhD researcher on North African Studies at the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies in Exeter, with a particular focus on Turkish foreign policy. We thank Ferhat and the audience for joining us this evening. Few words about Center for Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, which is us. Center for Asian and Middle Eastern Studies is a non-partisan organization based in London, promoting activities to understand Asia and the Middle East better, and acts as a hub for engaging with the region's politics, economics, as well as arts and cultural affairs. CAMES promotes dialogue, discussion, research, policymaking, public engagement, and outreach across a range of disciplines, including, but not limited to, anthropology, religion, history, political science, economics, gender, law, and human rights on Asia and Middle East. It does so through various collaborative activities and outreach programs. The focus of this webinar is the crisis in Libya. Libya is a North African country with around 6.8 million people. Up until 2009, Libya had the highest HDI, Human Development Index, in Africa, and fourth highest GDP, Gross Domestic Product, per capita in Africa. The whole situation, however, changed after the fall of Gaddafi on February 2011. Post-Gaddafi Libya has become a battleground between various political fractions and between rival militias for a long time. Various countries started backing up these fractions, and soon Libya became a proxy war for those countries, with General Haftar in one side and the UN-recognized GNA, Government of National Accord, on the other. Fast forward 2020, Turkey-backed GNA has gained upper hand against General Haftar in recent battles. Now the question is, will the new gain of GNA usher a new era of political stability in Libya, or will it lead to further fighting and civil war? And also, what would be the role of Turkey in this context? Well, we'll try to know more about it in today's webinar. So without further ado, let me invite Speaker Ferhat Polat to talk on the topic. Ferhat, over to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. Shall I begin with just general information, how it happened, how did we come to this point, or question?
Yeah, that's fine. Just start with the general discussion, and then we'll come to question and answer later on.
Yeah, sure. I think we should divide Libyan conflict into different segments and three different stages. First one was in 2011 when Gaddafi was toppled, led by NATO, and particularly France and United Kingdom played very significant role to topple Gaddafi for 42 years of his military dictatorship. And from 2011 to 2014, there was a time to reunite the country and bring some, civilian authority. And I think Libyan people for 42 years relied on Gaddafi's dictatorship, and they really didn't have such experience in terms of political wise. So they had difficulties. Then 2014, there was another civil war, and led by warlord Khalifa Haftar, who controls much and east and southeast of Libya. And he's over 70 years old, and he was a close ally of Gaddafi at the time, and when Gaddafi took the power in 1960s. And after a certain time, he was captured in Chad in 80s. Then they fell out with Gaddafi, and he exiled in the US, and he lived for 20 years in Virginia, and he's believed to be trained by CIA during the time, and he's also citizen of America. And then he went back to Libya in early 2007, and he prepared himself, and he declared himself as a general. Then he didn't recognize the legitimacy of United Nations recognized government. It's also known GNA. And he began to fight against UN-backed government. And since then, we have seen a second civil war. Till last year in April, he launched an attack on the capital in order to topple the United Nations recognized government and install his own military dictatorship, like he took the model of Sisi in Egypt. More than 2,000 people have been killed and thousands of people have been displaced because of his attacks. And unfortunately, he has got lots of support from a number of countries, as you mentioned earlier, including France, which is member of European Union, member of United Nations Security Council, and provided significant support in terms of diplomatic also impunity. And on the other hand, Turkey supported GNA, and alongside with Qatar and Italy. Haftar also benefited support from United Arab Emirates, Egypt, particularly UAE, provided vital support for his offensive, because UAE sees GNA as a link to political Islam, and therefore they support more strong style men and like Sisi to replace someone who can easily control. Since 2019, then UN-backed government has requested military help, not only from Turkey, from 5 countries, including United Kingdom, Algeria, US, Italy, and Turkey was the only one who responded to their request and provided significant support. In January this year, two Libyan legitimate government and Turkey signed 2 different agreements. One was on maritime agreement. Another one was a military cooperation agreement, which was crucial for GNA at the time. Since then, Turkey sent some forces, technical, not combat forces, to reorganize GNA forces, as well as provided air defense systems and also armed drones, which have shifted the balance on the ground. Since then, GNA has gained significant victories against warlord Khalifa Haftar and his backers. Now, GNA is in a stronger position than before, thanks to Turkish support, and changed the dynamics on the ground. And now they cleared and liberated most of the west of Libya. Now they are advancing on Sirte, which is a gateway to east, and oil fields where Haftar controls. This is how the situation and the Libyan conflict has developed into this stage.
Thank you, Farhad. I thank you for giving us a overall overview, actually, what is going on in Libya at the moment. Of course, we will have questions from our audience, and the thing is, one question which has come from Brother Ruman, that what is the end game of Turkey in Libya? What do you think, Farhad?
I think since, there is a legitimate government, and it was created by the United Nations in 2015. There was a agreement between Tobruk-based, which is rival in east, and west of rival groups. They came together and they signed an agreement. It's called Libyan Political Agreement. Since then, GNA has a legitimacy, and Turkey supports legitimate government. In terms of Turkish position and presence in the country, it seems to be in line with international law. So Turkey support, because often the request they supported. And what Turkey wants to achieve in Libya, bring some sort of stability, because it has been 9 years since the uprising began, and still Libya hasn't achieved its political stability and economic stability. Imagine, only 6 million of population, huge reserves in terms of oil and gas, and it's such a rich country, but they have difficulties to even get basic needs. You know, many innocent people have been killed, many people have been displaced. What Turkey wants to achieve, bring some sort of stability, because since 1970s, Turkey and Libya have benefited mutual interest, and Turkey since then supported Libya in terms of construction and other fields, and Turkey supported and helped, and even Ottoman Empire. You know, Turkey and Libya has strong tie in terms of history, in terms of, you know, there are lots of similarities between Turkey and Libya, and also, of course, both countries, they have their own economic interest and political interest. So Turkey is not looking only one side, is not only pushing its own agenda, but also trying to help Libyan legitimate government to achieve stability. Once the country is stabilized, I think both Turkey and Libya, as well as other countries, can benefit. But unfortunately, some countries, they just try to push their own self-interest, regardless of the majority of people, what they demand from international community.
Well, thank you for that answer. With regard to the stability, Farhad, as you mentioned, how much? I mean, how much is it possible? Because of course, the Haftar, who is backed by, of course, we have Egypt over here, big party, and you have UAE, you have France, and you have Russia there. But Egypt since made some important decision, you know, put a lot of hardware next to the border of Libya. So, and it has already stated that it is ready to intervene militarily in Libya if the so-called red line in Sita is crossed by GNA. So with regard to stability, how is it possible, you think, that both party, GNA and LNA, will be agreed to sit on the table and work for a stable Libya?
That's a good point. Warlord Khalifa Haftar, you know, he has failed miserably, and it is clear now he's not going to take over the capital, and he has been pushed back from west of Libya. Now he's in east of Libya, and he has been questioned by his internal supporters. I mean, most of the tribe leaders they used to support, particularly from former Gaddafi supporters, even they question his position. And East-based parliament, Tobruk-based parliament speaker, Ageh Saleh, I think he has emerged as a new political leader who could deal with GNA in terms of negotiation. And I think Egypt has invested billions of dollars in the Haftar and Haftar's project, and particularly supported by UAE. UAE financed the offensive mostly, and other countries, including Russia, provided some offensive support. Thankfully, GNA survived, and now actually Egypt has involved in Libyan conflict, and directly since 2014, Egypt provided technical support in terms of even joint fighter jets with UAE. So, and Egypt claims it's a red line in Sirte and Al Jufra, which is another military base and in central Libya. But it's 1,000 kilometers away from Egypt's border. So how could be a red line for Egypt? And there is no such a threat from GNA. And what GNA wants to achieve, impose their authority across the country. And they don't want to divide the country from east and west, because then I think we will see more conflict. And let's assume if Haftar took over the capital, and I think we could have seen more fighting, more street fighting, more, casualties in terms of civilians. So I don't know what they want to achieve, but there is one thing it's clear from their side. They try to slow down the significant loss on the ground and gain some time to reorganize or replace Haftar to find someone else. That's why they called ceasefire. And although in the past GNA has agreed principle of ceasefire several times, let's remember in January there was a peace conference on Libya in Germany, and both rival groups, they agreed on the principle of the ceasefire, but the next day warlord Khalifa Haftar relaunched another attack. Even during the pandemic, he attacks on the hospitals. Many civilian people have been killed, according to United Nations reports. So among GNA members, I believe also from Turkish side, they really don't trust Haftar's promises, because undermining, he's giving the history of Haftar, he has undermined every single opportunities to reach a political solution. He just wants to involve and gain some time and show that he's a strong man, and he's the one who can fight against terrorism in the region. But actually, part of his militia groups, reportedly, he includes Maktalin Salafi groups, which is more radical groups in his rank. And plus, he really doesn't have an army. It's a ragtag of different militia groups, and coalition of different militia groups. All of them, they have different agendas, and I don't know how he can reunite. And thanks to financial help from number of countries, he has survived till this time. But I don't know, now he's in a difficult position, and he has been questioned by his internal and external supporters, and they are looking for a way to replace him.
Well, it's true, actually. I'm not so sure whether Khalifa Haftar is serious about a political solution or not, because the initiative taken by Russia a few months ago to unite both parties, he walked out from that initiative, and he didn't go for the political negotiation with the GNA. So that clearly shows that he was not willing to for a political settlement with the other party. So with regard to Russia's and France's involvement in Libya, what do you think? What are their main agendas there? What are their interests in Libya?
Let's begin with Russia. And Russia is looking for any single opportunity to expand its influence in the region. And Libya, it's a gateway to North Africa, and it's an oil-rich country, and there are lots of opportunities in terms of economics and military geostrategic ambitions. So what Russia wants to achieve in Libya, it seems that just want to get someone, because also Russia has had strong military partnership with Gaddafi. And since 2011, they lost most of the contracts, and reportedly they lost $5 billion US, and they just want to restore some of their loss, and also filling the vacuum left by NATO. Yes, NATO involved in 2011, toppled Gaddafi, but afterwards they didn't have such a cohesive strategy to bring some sort of political solution to Libyan conflict. Then Russia emerged and seen as a great opportunity and expand its tie with warlord Khalifa Haftar, but at the same time contacted with GNA just in case. And Russia has economic interests as well as political interests and military interests, and also wants to get base in Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So Libya is such a great place to gain this. So there are lots of ambitions, and so far they supported warlord Khalifa Haftar, but also they have a strong tie with Aga Saleh, who's a Eastern Parliament speaker, and I think they work together to find a new political roadmap to discuss further steps with GNA. France, historically, France has very strong relationship with
Sorry, we're having audio and video issues again.
Provided some military support, provided some political impunity, diplomatic impunity. Let's remember when Haftar launched his offensive on the capital last year in April, France blocked European Union to condemn Haftar's offensive, which provided another impunity to act and to continue his offensive. And France also a member of the United Nations Security Council, which played significant role for Haftar to have some impunity. And also France has its economic interest in the region, particularly where Haftar controls much of the east of Libya and south of east of Libya, where all the oil fields are lying. So political interest and economic interest, and also there is a rival and division between Italy and France, because Italy supports United Nations recognized government, and where Italian interest is in line, because they have also base in Misrata. And so that's why European Union, they couldn't have such a strong voice on the Libyan conflict. Right now, I think Turkey, since Turkey has involved in Libyan conflict, has created some momentum for peace and allow United Nations-led peace process to continue.
Thank you for that. Is there the another question is there any involvement of Israel in this conflict, you think?
In terms of Eastern Mediterranean Sea, reported today have cooperated with eastern part of Libya, with Tobruk-based parliament, alongside with Egypt and Greece. But there is not such a direct involvement. I haven't seen, and since I've been researching, but it is believed they have some link with Eastern Parliament, but there is not such a direct involvement so far that I have seen.
Okay, right. So we will have more questions from the audience, and may I request the audience to please put your questions at the chat box. That will really help us to put it to the speaker. Well, there's another questions from the audience, which is like, why is Egypt so eager to intervene in Libya, you think?
Egypt has two different conflicts. First of all, there's a security concern in its border with Libya. It's there are lots of terrorist attacks, and in the past also happened in its near border Libya. So they try to bring some sort of stability and security in its border to prevent further attacks on, especially in Sinai. And secondly, they have a view of, they see GNA is linked with Muslim Brotherhood, which is not strong in Libya, reportedly. They don't really have such a strong voice. And they see as a threat to their own regime. And that's why they really don't want to see some government who has a link with Muslim Brotherhood. And this is the ideological reason. And economical, Egypt has relied on Libyan economy, and it's a huge country. It has got so much population, and Egypt used to send 2-3 million people in Libya. Before Gaddafi was toppled, 2-3 million Egyptian people used to work in Libya, and they used to send billions of dollars to home country. So it was a significant economic benefit that they have had during the Gaddafi regime. And also Egypt wants to get cheap oil from Libya, where Haftar controls much of Libya, and where the oil fields are lying. So want to gain also some economic benefit. So it's a huge country and oil-rich country. So in terms of size, it's a big country. And also some people even claim that Egypt can send more people to Libya to have more money to send back to their country. And also once whoever is going to rule the country, if they have a strong tie with Egypt, it's easier for them to get more contracts. That's why.
Okay, what I was saying is that in Eastern Mediterranean there is a conflict between France and France, Egypt, Cyprus, and also Libya. And so a lot of parties, Turkey, a lot of parties are involved in that place with regard to the resource allocation of that part of that region. So could you shed some light on that? Actually, what is happening there, and that has something to do with, if something has that has something to do with the Libyan crisis as well?
I think since Turkey has signed a maritime agreement with United Nations recognized government in 2019 November. Since then, Libya became part of Eastern Mediterranean Sea conflict, and the countries you had just named, Egypt, Greece, even Israel and France, they see the agreement between Turkey and Libya could prevent to reach they have a failed accompli, but Turkey involved and signed a maritime agreement with Libyan legitimate government. Since then, I think the agreement was a game changer. And through the agreement, Turkey and Libya can benefit, and they can research oil in Eastern Mediterranean Sea, and reportedly Turkey will send some, some sort of resources to continue and find resources in Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, those countries, including Egypt, Greece, France, and Israel, they see as a threat to their ambitions in Eastern Mediterranean Sea, and which is believed violated the international law. But the agreement between Turkey and Libya, it seems to be legitimate, and it's in line with international law. Therefore, they want to see someone who can, not allow Turkey to gain access to Eastern Mediterranean Sea through Libya. That's why they support Haftar, because Haftar promised these countries, if is in power, he will not allow such an agreement to be implemented. That's why there is also division. Unfortunately, some of the European countries, they support the rival group, which is not legitimate, who is trying to undermine the international peace and political solution in Libya. This is the main reason.
Thank you for that. We have an important comment here, and which states that actually all the parties that are involved, especially the foreign parties involved in the fight in Libya, don't want to have a stable Libya, politically stable Libya, because they have their own interest and they have their own agenda. And that's why they don't want to have a stable Libya. Now, the question we have received that if this is the case, then what would be the future? How the problem will be solved? What do you think?
As I mentioned earlier, since Turkey has involved in Libyan conflict, since they supported Libyan legitimate government, it was a game changer in terms of balancing the shift on the ground, because GNA was in a weak position to defend itself against Haftar's offensive, and Haftar was supported by, and is still being supported by, a number of countries. Since Turkey involved, particularly in April, provided significant support for GNA, which has shifted balance on the ground. And now, suddenly, most of the European countries, they just try to call for a ceasefire and implement an arms embargo. And let's remember, recently, European Union used an Iranian operation on Eastern Mediterranean Sea in order to prevent arms delivery to most of the, to west of countries. Only one who supports GNA through sea is Turkey, and but rest of the countries, including Egypt and UAE, they provide support through air, and that operation really doesn't stop Haftar receiving arms from countries like Egypt and UAE, even Russia. So, but suddenly when
Sorry, we seem to have a bit problem with the line. Let's hope the line would be better, and we'll hear from
initiative to reach a political solution in Libya. There is already existing political agreement, Libyan political agreement. If all countries, they agree on the principles, and if they allow United Nations-led peace process to continue, I think then we can see some sort of practical improvements in terms of stability and peace negotiations. But unfortunately, those countries, they just try to push harder to gain their own economic interest and political interest. But Turkey is, I think, adamant, and Turkey is supporting GNA, and I don't think now they will already. It has been 9 years to conflict, and many people have suffered from this ongoing conflict. I believe in the future some sort of stability will come to Libya, but I don't know how. But Turkish involvement has created some momentum for peace process to continue. So in the future, we can see some more diplomatic initiatives, either from Russia or from Turkey, but European Union, unfortunately, they lost their credibility in Libya because they couldn't, officially they support GNA, United Nations recognized government, but some of their member states, they supported Khalifa Haftar, which was divisive approach. So hopefully in the future we can see some sort of unity among European countries to discuss further steps how to bring a ceasefire and long-term political solution to Libyan crisis.
Thank you for that, Farhad. We have a few more questions. Actually, we are going to end very soon. I hope our audience have more questions, and we'll be answering them one by one. Now,
yeah, sure.
We have another question here. What is the possibility of Turkey achieving a peace in Libya?
Can I have your question again, please?
Yep. What is the possibility of Turkey achieving peace in Libya? Sorry, Farhad, can you hear?
Yeah, I got your question. Yeah, I can hear you now. in terms of achieving a peace in Libya, seems to be a little bit difficult because Libyan conflict is considered as a proxy war. Many countries involved, as I named a number of countries: Egypt, Russia, France, UAE. Those countries seems to make it difficult to bring some sort of atmosphere to discuss political solutions in Libya. But Turkey will strongly support, as Vice President of Turkey recently stated, that Turkey will support Libyan government, Libyan legitimate government, and Libyan people until they reach their goal. And in 2011, those people, they just demanded more civilian authority, more democracy in their country, and they don't really want to see another sort of strongman or dictatorship to replace Gaddafi and rule with all the tribe leaders and for their self-interest, and regardless of the large majority of people. I believe Turkey could bring some sort of atmosphere to discuss political solution. Not only Turkey, I think Turkey also should Turkey is signaling and already wants to cooperate with NATO, and recently stated that wants to help GNA to secure and place stability in the country, and also European Union. If European Union and if NATO and all the international communities, if they come together and if they agree on the principles, because what Turkey is supporting is only legitimate demands from Libyan people, and because GNA is a legitimate government and recognized by most of the European countries, and I mean even France recognized GNA as a legitimate government, although they support Haftar. So if they have more coherent policy and if they cooperate with Turkey, and I think then we can see some kind of political solutions to Libyan conflict. And I don't think from now Libyan people will give up on fighting and allowing another dictator to rule the country.
Thank you for answering that. We have another question, which is with regard to the Syrian mercenaries. You know, both sides, at the side of the GNA and also at the side of the Haftar, there are quite a huge number of Syrian mercenaries involved. Do you think this involvement of Syrian mercenaries will help stabilizing Libya, or will it make the situation worse?
Depends on which side they support. If they support eastern part, I mean Haftar's side, militia groups, and then I don't see any contribution to stability in Libya. And GNA sides reported that they have some Syrian mercenaries, but we don't know the number of mercenaries. But on the other hand, Haftar sides, they don't only have Syrian mercenaries. They have number of mercenaries from African countries, including Chad and Sudan, as well as from Wagner, which is a military company, provides fighters. In center of Libya. So mercenaries are, supporting different sides, but mostly they support Haftar sides, which is more divisive, and they really don't contribute to bring any stability in Libya.
Thank you, Farhad. I think we're nearly at the end. We have one more question for you, which is with regard to the Turkey. You see, Turkey has a huge involvement in Syria, and now it is stepping up its effort for the GNA in Libya as well. So, do you think Turkey will be able to balance these both places properly, and will it be able to sort these two things properly? Because it will definitely put a lot of strain on its economical and political areas as well.
So far, I think Turkey has proved itself as a strong militarily and diplomatically. And, let's remember, a number of countries support Haftar's offensive. And GNA actually practically gets only support from Turkey, despite the fact that Haftar had lots of support from many countries. GNA had only Turkey, but since Turkey involved, changed the balance on the ground, shift the balance, and it's considered as a game changer. And thanks to Turkish involvement, now GNA is in a stronger position. In Syria, we have lots of, it's a neighbor country, and Turkey has refugee issues. We all have almost 4 million refugees based in Turkey. And Turkey also has a legitimate security concern from Syria, and they just want to prevent other affiliated groups like linked to PKK. It's a terrorist organization. It's considered by European Union and Western countries. So Turkey just wants to prevent those militias or terrorist organizations to gain more foothold in Syria as well as in Libya. So what Turkey is, of course, Turkey also has its own interest in terms of economic and political interest, but Turkish interest is not only one-sided. It's beneficial for both sides. It's beneficial for Libyan legitimate governments, and also it's beneficial for Turkey. Turkey is providing support for the Libyan legitimate government upon the request, and also Turkey wants to, rebuild Libya once the country is stabilized. Turkey has a great experience in helping in terms of construction and any more fields that both countries they can cooperate. So I think Turkey's interest is in line with international law. Of course, they have also their own interest, but it's not harming the interest of majority of Libyan people.
Thank you for answering. Last questions to you, Farhad. There seems to be a huge development going on in Sirte, in Libya, in terms of military hardware from both sides, GNA side and also Haftar side. Do you think with that there is a possibility of clash among France, Russia, and Turkey because of the Sirte, issue?
It's hard to expect any direct competition countries, including Egypt. I don't think Egypt will involve to support Haftar in Sirte. I mean, they support Haftar, but I don't think they will send soldiers to support the offensive. GNA is trying to take control of the Sirte, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a strategic city. It's a gateway to oil fields as well as the east of the country. So since January, Haftar has imposed a blockade on the oil fields, and the Libyan people have suffered directly from this imposed and lost almost $5 billion since January, according to officials in Libya. So I think GNA is determined to get control of the Sirte and control of the oil fields, which could allow GNA to, ease the tensions and allow some, provide some fundings for basic needs, because oil-rich country, but they really don't have such basic needs. So they struggle to access to those needs, and financially in a difficult position. So Haftar and his militias, they try to gain as much as economic interest by blocking the oil fields and selling through an illegal way. So that harms also Libyan economy. That's why I think the GNA will continue to fight in Sirte. Already they have been fighting, and I think they are advancing on Sirte, and probably they could take control the city soon. In the back channel, it is believed Russia and Turkey is discussing how they can bring some sort of ceasefire, but the GNA is determined to take Sirte and the oil fields. Then I think they like to talk how they can bring a ceasefire.
Thank you, Farhad. With that, we have ended our Q&A. We are really sorry, and we express our apology for the poor audio and video at some points. And we would like to thank Farhad Polat for attending today at our webinar. We'd also like to thank our audience for attending, asking questions, and making our webinar a successful one. Please keep your eyes on our website, which is cames.org.uk, for further events. We hope to have your participation and cooperation in future as well. So thank you again for your patience. Please do press the leave button at the bottom of your device so that we can end the webinar.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a nice evening.
You too, Farhad. See you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.